estrogen is withdrawn from the patient, then some of these glands may wither down, they may dilate, become cystically dilated, and the gland stroma ratio may decrease. Now, this is what happens in a classic case of, non-atypical hyperplasia. Look at the gland stroma ratio, so that is increased. Second point is you can see over here that there is a variation in the size of the glands. The third point you can see over here, if I move my arrow and you can see the arrow, some of them are dilated. Look at this one, look at this one. Some of them are dilated. So, and the stroma is a little bit loose, which is okay, but overall the gland stroma ratio has increased. Now, if you look carefully at the glands ke andar jaake dekho, so in the glands, the lining epithelium of the glands is still well maintained. The nuclear polarity is well maintained. So there is no loss of polarity of the cells of the glandular epithelium. Now, when you look and compare and contrast this with the case of atypical hyperplasia, there is going to be an increased gland stroma ratio. The difference over here is that the glands are very crowded, so an even more increased gland stroma ratio. Second is there would be budding, branching of the glands. Third is the back-to-back arrangement is increased. Fourth is within the glands itself, if you look at the cells have become round and plump. And जो well behaved cells आपको दिख रहे थे, so over here you can see that all the cells are kind of oriented at 90 degrees. So that thing is lost. Okay, so that perpendicular orientation is lost. Even the nuclei plump up, show vesicular chromatin. And this is also something that is synonymous with what you call as the endometrial intraepithelial neoplasia or EIN. So you can't distinguish between a frank malignancy without a hysterectomy. So if you are reporting atypical hyperplasia, that means the next step is the uterus is going to come out, because this may just be a focus. You may have, when you section the rest of the uterus, you may have frank invasion of such glands, which would be malignant. So you have to rule that out. Okay. So you can see over here marked increase in gland stroma ratio. You can see the marked back-to-back proliferation of the arrangement of the glands. You can see that some of them, they're showing that I would say branching, budding configuration. And although in this case, by and large, you can see the nuclear polarity is still maintained at the vertical with 90 degrees, but there's a lot of hyperchromasia. There's a crowding over here. And I'm sure if you look very carefully, there are some very black dots in between, which are representative of an increased mitotic index. So, by and large, this is what you call as the atypical hyperplasia. Here you can see clear cut. The orientation has definitely started being lost. There is nuclear hyperchromasia. There is nuclear atypia. There even is a little bit of vesicular chromatin. If we go in high power, you would even see prominent nucleoli, right? So how do you manage a case? Well, you're going to manage this case like you're going to manage an endometrial carcinoma minus the extensive radical sampling of the nodes and the adnexa. So it's going to be a hysterectomy, and obviously progesterone. You want to counter the estrogenic stimulus that is led to the mess, and of course a close follow-up. So now we're going into the second condition for today, and that is endometriosis. Now, we know that the uterus has a lining, a cavity, okay? A cavity, and when we open up the uterus, that cavity is nothing but the endometrial cavity, the uterine cavity, lined by endometrium. When this endometrium goes to some place outside the uterus, it's wandering outside the uterus, it's going into another city altogether, it is called as endometriosis. Now, when this tissue has wandered to another city altogether, it's gone to another organ, it's gone to the bowel, it's gone here, there, in the wherever it's going, it is going to go with its full, honors. So there would be the glands, there would be the stroma. The problem is that sometimes when we receive the samples for histopathology, we cannot see. Sometimes the stroma is missing. Sometimes you even see a one chunk of gland here or there. So it becomes very difficult to diagnose at times. On the right, you can see what is this. This is a laparoscopic image. Endometriosis is generally nowadays a diagnosis of laparoscopy, and you can see over here. So these are these red spots. Okay, these red spots are nothing but endometriotic deposits. You have the rectum over here, you have the uterus, so that is like a posterior structure, and here is the normal part of the colon. So all these red spots and streaks are endometriotic lesions. So this is the lap view. Now, which all sites are generally involved? You have the ovaries, you have the peritoneum, you have the fallopian tube. So all the adnexa, all the ligaments, even a previous laparotomy scar. Then you would have the cul-de-sac. It could go into the GI, the bowel, the appendix, and it could go downwards into the cervix and vagina. Right? So this is where it is. Now, how is the patient going to come to you? More often than not, these patients are actually going to come to you in an OPD setting complaining of infertility. The second most important thing is the patients of endometriosis generally present with pain. Now, that pain is generally associated with where the endometriotic deposit is. So if it is, somewhere in the intestine or in the colon, so there would be altered bowel habits. If it is involving the rectal wall, there would be pain on defecation. If it's gone to the bladder, there would be pain during urination. If it is, for example, in the cervix, vagina, there is dyspareunia. Then you have pelvic pain if it's there in the ligaments. Then you may have dysmenorrhea itself, painful menses or menstrual irregularity. Sorry, infertility dobara ho gaya. So how is it happening? It's because of various processes that may be inside the uterus or outside the uterus, summarized as there could be a retrograde menstruation, there is an estrogen factor involved, there's a stem cell therapy, there's local as well as systemic this inflammation mediated by the ROS, and then there may be androgenic factors. So what are the theories involved? The regurgitation theory. Now, retrograde menstruation, we all know that this is the uterine cavity I was talking about, which is lined by the endometrium. On a normal basis, what is happening? Shedding of the endometrial lining of the uterine cavity every month, going downwards through the cervix, flowing outside the body. So this is the normal direction, normal scheme of things. Sometimes the normal flow reverses. So it's retrograde menstruation, opposite direction of flow. You have this blood that is flowing into the fallopian tubes towards the ovaries and the ligaments. So this retrograde menstruation to some percent actually happens a little regularly, but it's not supposed to happen so much so that it causes the. So that's one. Now, then you have the metaplastic theory. Now, if you look at the embryology of this portion, you would understand that endometrium arises directly from the coelomic epithelium. Okay, that is the mesothelial lining of the pelvis or at the abdomen at the embryonic level, from which you have the Mullerian ducts coming out, and the endometrium is also coming out. Now, if you have some remnants of this. Just a second. Divya, मेरी class चल रही है? कोई issue? Okay. So now you have mesonephric remnants that may be left. They would undergo endometrial differentiation. Then you have peritoneal disease when you have the pelvic mesothelium changing into endometrial lining epithelium. Then the ovarian disease may happen if the cortex is invaginated. Then you may have rectovaginal nodules. So basically, this is all happening because the remnant mesonephric derivatives, Mullerian derivatives, right? Coelomic derivatives, they're all transitioning or metaplastic changes are occurring in these lines to give us the endometrial lining. Another thing is the benign metastatic theory. So they are saying that actually what is happening is from the uterus, they're being implanted outside into the outside world via the blood vessels itself and the lymphatic channels. So because of the blood vessel supply to other organs, chipped off endometrium can be carried off distant to distant sites. Another thing is the stem cell theory. So you have the bone marrow. We know that bone marrow is a very rich source of stem cells. Now the recent theory is the bone marrow stem cells, they are differentiating into endometrial tissue, and this itself is giving rise to the presence of endometriotic implants. Now, when you see these implants and you analyze them on a molecular level, what is happening? These implants themselves are releasing pro-inflammatory cytokines, which may be IL-8, IL-6, TNF alpha, etc. Another thing that they're doing is that there is increased estrogen production by the endometriotic stromal cells. So ये जो stroma है implants का, that is also active. That is producing estrogen. And there is a high level of aromatase enzyme, which is so vis-a-vis a normal endometrial stroma. In the endometriotic stroma, you have a higher level of aromatase, and basically this in itself is a culprit for putting the entire environment in a hyperestrogenic state. So estrogen enhances the survival and persistence of the endometriotic tissue. So it's a vicious cycle. वो thrive करता रहता है. So then is there any association with cancer? Yes. Endometrioid form of endometrial cancer, clear cell variant. Then there are mutations in genes which have been seen in endometriotic cysts as well as atypical endometriosis. Now, what are the gross features? As I mentioned on these two features here, lap. So lap, this is like a bowel. This is a bowel with the adherent. In fact, this is rectum with adherent fat, mesorectum. Now you have certain nodules which are white in color. Here is another lap. So here you have cystic lesions which are bluish in color. So these are the variations which you can see on lap. So if it is, so this is actually somewhere in the adnexa, and you can even see these adhesions being produced. So long-standing endometriosis because of the inflammation component that is associated. We have pro-inflammatory cytokines and consequent laying down of fibroblasts in cases of chronic endometriosis. So you get these adhesions. Now inside the ovary, if endometriosis is confined to the ovaries, what happens? So you can see in this photo over here, the ovary has become enlarged. It is grossly distorted. आपको इसका normal architecture नहीं पता, outer cortex and inner ovary and hilum, वो कुछ नहीं समझ में आ रहा. You have a cystic structure, you have a cystic cavity which is filled with this brownish fluid, which is actually solidified to form a brownish coagulum. The cysts may be varying in size multiple. It is giving you a chocolatey appearance, and hence the name the chocolate cyst or the endometrioma. It's very chocolatey looking, right? And then histology. Now, if you take an endometriotic cyst, what is the problem? As I mentioned, the problem is sometimes, now if we look at this is the cyst lining. So this is some epithelium. You don't have actually an endometrial gland over here, na? So you may have endometrial type lining, यहाँ तो थोड़ा सीढ़िया भी लग रहा है, and then you can see this brownish thing that is nothing but hemosiderin laden macrophages, and this thing over here is a bit of stroma. The main problem is you may not get a combination of these three features at all. So you need endometrial type glands, you need endometrial type stroma, and you need evidence of chronic hemorrhage or the hemosiderin laden macrophages. All the three may not be present together. Second point, go in for serial sections. Keep on slicing the endometrium till you get these. Otherwise, then there are other diagnostic modalities. So then the surgeon may ask you, okay, please kindly, the patient has a nodule. Is it malignancy or is it something else? So then they do a frozen section. Now, after doing the frozen section, I've explained to you earlier, how you do frozen section. So on a frozen section analysis, you can see the presence of one endometrial gland, another one over here, and this is the presence of endometrial stroma. So the lesion is definitely not malignant. Now, if you have a problem in localizing whether this is of endometrial origin or not, so you can always put up IHC. So the marker for endometrial stroma on the left, you can see over here is CD10. So this is highlighting the endometrial stroma. On the right side, you have estrogen receptor as your marker, ER, which is a nuclear marker. Now, the nucleus are all lit up. So ER is highlighting the endometrial glands as well as focally the endometrial stroma, and the proper stromal marker is CD10 on the left. So if I want to find out whether I have an endometriotic implant in the peritoneum, I can also put up an IHC. So there's a term called as burnt out endometriosis, which are changes suggestive of endometriosis, but is lacking the typical features. What does this mean? You have necrosis, either all this pink material is necrosis. Then in the inset, you have these palisaded histiocytes, which are actually over here. And you have these xanthomatous or foamy macrophage looking cells. So ये सब है, but you don't have these things. You don't have these three features: endometrial type glands, endometrial type stroma, and the hemosiderin business, right? So this is a burnt out. Then there's something called atypical endometriosis. So वही चीज है, but the lining is now showing a lot of atypia. The architecture may be pretty much okay, but the lining is atypical. Then there's a second thing that may happen: the glands that you're getting, they become very crowded, and then they may resemble the complex kind of earlier, which was called as complex, and now it's atypical endometrial hyperplasia. So that is the other kind of manifestation you may have. So how are you going to treat this thing? You give hormones, you give progestins, OCPs, surgically excise the lesions, laser-based therapies, and NSAIDs for pain. Very, very, very important cause of infertility in the reproductive age group. Always keep an open mind for this diagnosis. Many of your patients going to come to you in your gynae OPDs are going to be females suffering from this. Anybody complaining of pain, keep the index of suspicion high for this. Now, another one is adenomyosis. What is adenomyosis? So, if the endometrium is traveling to an outside city, it is, what is it? It is endometriosis. But if your endometrial glands are going locally in the neighborhood, then it's adenomyosis. So that means you would have ingrowing of endometrium into the neighborhood. And what is the neighborhood? The neighborhood is the myometrium, or the uterine smooth muscle. So over here, exactly the same. This is an adenomyotic focus. You can see glands and you can see stroma. Etiology unknown, but by now, actually many scientists have come up with many theories. I'll just tell you them. So the patient is usually asymptomatic. Generally, we find that adenomyosis is an incidental detection. The female may have her uterus removed for some other condition, and then you see foci of adenomyosis. Paris females 40 years of age, they can jolly well coexist with endometriosis as well as fibroids. Then you have a normal, so this is what it actually looks on real time. It's basically the endometriotic implants within the substance of the uterus. Clinical types are basically, it can be diffuse, it can be focal, they can present like polyps, they can be confined to the endocervix. So in this diagram, you can imagine that they are just confined over here. Then they can go to the retroperitoneal area, so that's retroperitoneal. The pathology is the uterus becomes enlarged. Why is it becoming enlarged? Because the myometrium has expanded. Second thing is because of the deposits, the uterus would become asymmetrically enlarged. More so on the posterior, but actually it can be anywhere. Size is never too much, so that's vis-a-vis other conditions. Cut section is this thickening of uterine wall showing a characteristic trabeculated appearance. Now, unlike other lesions, there would, like maybe even a solid cystic lesion, there is no capsule here, right? What does this mean? Now look at this. This is the kind of trabeculated appearance. What is trabecule? Actually, network bana rahe hain. It's not a good resolution figure, but it's a lesion that has caused a bulky, globally expanded uterus. तो ये uterus आपका बहुत bulky लग रहा है. It is enlarged in size. There is this lesion that does not have a well-defined border or a capsule, and it's very, firm, and it has trabeculations. That's your adenomyosis. So some investigators have actually given some definitions. What is the criteria to diagnose this? You have to have endometrial glands and stroma to a depth of at least 1/3 of the uterine wall thickness. That means jitna aapka uterine wall ka thickness hai, take 1/3. Take 1/3 of that, and anything below the 1/3 is actually an adenomyosis. Now you have a grading also, so grade 1. So this is a very nice kind of thing. Here you can see the endometrial lining on the top. अगर ये यहाँ तक है तो it's grade 1. If it's going beyond to the middle 1/3, it becomes grade 2. And if it's crossing and going to the outer 1/3 of the myometrium, it becomes grade 3. And likewise, on the basis of the number of glands, you have your bird grading mild, moderate, and severe. Now, the Genesis von Recklinghausen theory is that it's nothing but again an origin from the Mullerian duct, somewhat similar to what we had described in endometriosis. The Cullen theory, which is that nothing doing, it's a direct invasion of the basal endometrium into the myometrium, and the trauma of childbirth leads to the fragility, the breakdown of the endomyometrial border, वो weak हो जाता है, and as a result of which the endometrium is going downwards, and subsequently there is reactive hyperplasia leading to this condition. It may also occur because of some, because of some metaplastic change that may occur from a serous coat that may intrinsically be present. There's a new hypothesis coming forward, that is the arterioles within the uterine muscle, or the spiral arterioles. Actually, they have, an altered physiology, and because of that altered physiology, you have deposits that are going downwards. Okay, and why is this happening? That is happening because blood vessels, if you have an increased proliferation of the blood vessels within the uterine smooth muscle itself, you have more nutrition, and because of more nutrition, you have a more fertile ground for extrinsic deposits to flourish. So scientists have figured out that there is actually an altered vasculature also that is supporting the growth of these extrinsic deposits. Then you have associated conditions, as I mentioned earlier. You could have leiomyomas, hyperplasia, you could have endometriosis, which is one of the more commoner associations. And the underlying factor, as I mentioned, is always the hyperestrogenic state. So yes, everyone does say it should be at least one high power field below basal endometrium. One high power field is nothing but a 40x, and somebody has also classified it, Benson and Sneedens, at least two low power fields below the basal endometrium. So this is what you have, all center put within the uterine smooth muscle. So the glandular tissue is going to be surrounded by the stroma. It's already mentioned 1 HPF or 2 LPFs, and the response to steroids may be pretty minimal. What are the other theories? So basically, another theory is that there's a lot of tissue injury, maybe because of childbirth, or because of instrumentation, or because of pregnancy itself, that has led to a weakness of the myometrium. Then there's also a stem cell theory that is similar to what we had discussed in endometriosis. There even may be a EMT component which is resulting in the motility of the endometriotic cell, endometrial cells downwards. We have already talked about the metaplastic theory of pluripotent Mullerian rests. So now my job is over, and now you are going to tell me what this is. So class, tell me, ये कौन सा lesion है? What lesion is this? Yes, जोर से बोलो बेटा. What's your name? Bhavya. Yeah, Bhavya, tell me what is this? Perfect. So how would you like to describe it? In the exam, you're going to have to describe the specimen. So how are you going to describe it? Just, yeah. Yes. That's exactly why I'm trying to make you verbalize this. So you're going to say your first line should be formalin fixed, wet mount specimen of lesion which appears the ovary, and then you will be asked why do you think it's the ovary. So over here you can very nicely see that this is remnant ovary, right? Ovarian parenchyma, and you can see adnexa, you can see the presence of fallopian tube with fimbria also, right? So this is definitely an ovarian lesion. It's a cystic lesion. Whenever we describe a cyst, we would like to tell the dimension of the cyst. What is the size of the cyst? So that is one. Second, you are going to describe the thickness of the cyst, that is whether it is 2 mm or 3 mm. The third thing is when you open the cyst, what do you see? Is it a solid cystic or is it purely cystic? The fourth thing you're going to describe is what are the contents of the cyst? Is it fluid? Is it gelatinous? Is it mucus? Or is it having hair follicles, immature cartilage, teeth, like what you see in a dermoid cyst? So I hope you now know how you're supposed to describe this. So this is how you describe any cyst. Either आपको hair follicles मिल रहे हैं, either you can see this whitish hard kind of thing. It could be tooth, it could be cartilage, and then you can see, I guess, some other irregularity over here. So it's by and large it is cystic only, with hair follicles, with this whitish hard area, and then you would like to subsequently sample for commenting whether you can see the presence of all the three germ layers. That's not something you can see on gross. Then what about this? What is this? ये क्या है? Anyone?
In the middle, it is the uterus.
Absolutely. Very nice. This is the uterus. So you can see the bivalve uterus. You can see the uterine cavity over here. You can see that this is the area from which I'd like to sample the endometrium. This is bivalve, so you can see the entire cavity going downwards, and this is the cervix, the lips of the cervix. This is the fundus, the pear-shaped uterine organ, and then you have the two huge ovaries, so which are attached to the uterus. Now with that information, what do you think this is? So you have a uterus that has been opened up and sliced, and you have huge looking ovaries, bilateral. So ये क्या हो सकता है? Anybody?
PCOS.
Right, that's a very nice kind of guess. But had it been PCOS, you would have, as I mentioned, there's something called the string of pearls or the necklace appearance. So you have lots of cysts which are present in the लेकर यहाँ तक आपको छोटे छोटे cysts दिखेंगे, okay? और फिर बीच में भी आएंगे. Over here you have just one large cyst here and a few cysts over here, and if you look on this side, right side की ovary में, you have this blackish discoloration which is nothing but a remnant of hemorrhage. These are cysts that have basically shown some hemorrhagic change. So you have solid cystic lesions, bilateral ovaries, and expansion or enlargement of the bilateral ovaries. So it's definitely looking, and because of the hemorrhagic foci also, it's definitely looking like a malignant lesion. And bilateral expansion or enlargement of ovaries, you should always think of something called the Krukenberg's tumor. Now, the Krukenberg's tumor basically refers to a tumor that either has metastasized, from the stomach, right? So the mucinous variant signet ring cells are seen histologically. So this is very, very characteristic. When you see bilateral ovarian pathology, think of Krukenberg, right? Next, what is this? Wonderful, excellent. So this is an opened up cyst which actually has many cysts, or you can say multiloculations, right? Multiple cysts and multiloculations. So what does that mean? It's basically, and you can see if you look carefully, so thoda although I agree at this resolution, it's difficult to make out. But if you're going to cut open these cysts, you're going to get mucinous material. तो थोड़ा glistening surface तो आपको दिख रहा है. So this is nothing but a surface epithelial tumor, that is the mucinous ovarian cyst, that is known to have multiloculated appearance, multiple cysts, varying size. Even within these cysts, you can see septations हो रहे हैं इसमें. So this is nothing but a mucinous cyst adenoma. Now, in the we'll go to the next one and then I'll discuss something. ये क्या है, by the way? This is also the ovary. So in the ovary, what could it be? Anyone? Any guess? Where are you girls? तो सबसे easy है. Where? What is this? Anybody? Wild guess? Perfect. So this is a serous cyst adenoma. It's a single cyst, and over here you can see one septation, but generally it's uniloculated. So the words that you use is uniloculated. Here you can see some papillary excrescences that are also present. So as I mentioned, if you have any solid areas, if you have any papillary excrescences, you would like to take sections from this area, because you would then be able to ascertain whether it's a borderline tumor or a malignant tumor. There are three categories within the serous as well as mucinous tumors. One is the benign, one is borderline, and one is malignant. So how are you going to ascertain which one is benign, which one is borderline, which one is malignant? By sampling the areas that are looking different. Okay, जैसे इस वाले में ये area आपका different लग रहा है, so we're going to sample this and see whether there is any invasion. Okay, so this is how you are going to describe all ovarian cysts. I hope this is clear to all of you girls. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So read up very nicely. Female genital tract is very, very interesting, and I would say that बहुत exposure भी है आपको यहाँ पे Harding में, and आगे भी life में you're going to see a lot of female patients coming up with something or the other. So be very, very, nice on reading this. You should know everything about it. Okay? It's our duty as females to serve females nicely. Okay? They come in from very impoverished backgrounds, and it's always a pleasure to help them. Okay? So I'll sign out. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. Good question. So actually, atypical hyperplasia, bacha itself is now categorized as endometrial intraepithelial neoplasia. So they have already kept it in the category of a pre-neoplastic or neoplastic lesion. Now, for your question as to the question can be rephrased as to, so it's already actually dysplasia only, right? Now the question is how you differentiate between an EIN and a frank endometrial cancer. So that is happening when you have invasion. Okay. So if you have invasion into the stroma of malignant glands, then that is your endometrial carcinoma. Okay. Right. Anything else? Okay. Read well.